All right, it looks like most everyone is logged in now, so we will go ahead and get started with the OmegaOne webinar. My name is Heather McLeod, and I am with OmegaFi's professional services team. I have with me today Sarah Beth Russell, who's also on the professional services team and will be doing the majority of your training today. Before we dive into that, I did just want to go over a couple of things. First is to introduce you to OmegaFi. For those of you that may not be familiar with us, OmegaFi actually hosts OmegaOne as one of our products that we work with and that we manage for you all. And OmegaFi has actually been around for more than 30 years, providing various technology solutions to help customers manage their finances, streamline their operations, recruit new members, and communicate with their members, which we know is a big part of OmegaOne and what you'll be getting some training on today. And we work with 57 different national headquarters. We also work with, of course, local chapters and house corporations, and even IFC and Panhellenic councils, and alumni associations across more than 650 campuses. And we remain the industry leader when it comes to technology in the fraternity and sorority community. We are based out of Columbus, Georgia, and securely process more than $1.1 million per day for our clients. And we've securely processed more than $4 billion since 1992 when we first got started. We are very deeply committed to serving and promoting and advancing the fraternity and sorority experience. We aim to make raving fans with every individual or group that we work with by reaching and innovating and acting with agility. We challenge ourselves to dream big every day and to help others achieve their own dreams. So to say that we're passionate about what we do is an understatement. And it's this passion that has encouraged our clients to trust us to do the heavy lifting so that you all can focus on your mission and having fun. So just a little bit of background about OmegaFi. Before Sarah Beth dives into the training, I do just want to make sure that you all know how to submit questions throughout the webinar. So you should see there a little window with a question box. So throughout the training, please use that to submit any questions to me. And then at the end, we'll certainly address any that I'm unable to get to make sure that you get all of your questions answered today. So let's actually test out that question box. I want to make sure that you can see it there on your screen. So if you would just type in your name and your chapter, and let's make sure that that information comes through. So again, there's a little window there. Just type in your name and your chapter real quick, and let's make sure that those come through and we can see that, and that you all are able to submit questions if any come up throughout the training. All right, I see those coming through. Thank you all so much for testing that out for us. Looks like that's working. Thanks so much. All right, well, I will turn it over to Sarah Beth for the training.
Hello, everyone. So today we are going to be going over OmegaOne, and for our agenda today, we have a few different things. As we are coming to the end of fall, officer transitions are kind of on everybody's mind. So we're going to focus today on how you can use OmegaOne to help facilitate that, as well as still going through your admin features. So we'll start with how to update your users that are coming into admin or officer positions, and then go through the various admin features, and then we will focus also on email and text communications, since that is the biggest way that you can keep in contact with your members on OmegaOne, and then we'll do Q&A at the end of that. But as Heather said, if you have any questions during the webinar, you can go ahead and submit those in the question box, and we will get to those while we're going through the material. So to break this down, successful transition of officers can be put into 3 simple phases. Basically, making sure you update those user accesses so that your new people who are coming in will have that access they need in order to facilitate the operations of the chapter, as well as utilizing your admin tools to communicate with your members and keep them informed, and same with the mass communication. It's a great way to keep users informed. So starting out, when you come into your OmegaOne, you're going to land on this home screen here. This is your OmegaOne wall. It kind of is similar to like a Facebook wall where you have updates, you can make posts, you can attach files and photos. And so any important news or any updates that have been made in the chapters of OmegaOne by an admin, typically as long as they check off the box, it will post onto your wall. So this is a really good, just quick reference of anything new that has come in. So this is just where it initially takes you and will kind of keep you up to date on timeline of when things have been put out there. So first we're going to look at under the admin tools over here where the wrench and the screwdriver are, we're going to look at manage users. So we can look at how to update your members' access level. So when you're here on this screen, this is where you would typically add your users as well as change access level, member type. You can look at their stats and login as well as edit users. So from here, you can edit to turn off communications or delete members if they are going to become alum, or you can move them to alum status if they're wanting to still stay active within the OmegaOne. And here is where you can change the member type. So whenever your new members are initiated, you'd move them to member. And then when members graduate, you can move them to alumni. Now, depending on your national organization, some do have integrations with OmegaOne. So if they have a particular integration, you won't see the option to add users up here, as those are automatically imported based on whatever portal you use with your national organization. So for those, you will make all your updates in your national portal to officers and that sort and member type, and those will pull into the OmegaOne system. But for all other chapters, for the majority of chapters, you're going to be able to control that here. And here is where those access levels can be changed. So you just want to make sure that during this election season, if somebody is coming into an officer position or moving up to an admin position, or is just dropping back down and coming out of a position, that you update those access levels here. This is important to do to make sure that people who should no longer have access don't, and those who should have what they need, especially if people who are currently admins are graduating. A lot of times with turnaround, we see people graduate and then nobody has admin access who is a current member. So you can kind of bypass that by just making sure you update those users ASAP and that they are good to go before the end of the semester. To kind of go over what those user statuses are, normal users are only going to have access to member-specific menu options, so they won't see this tool right here. This is specifically only the admin tool. And then for officers, they will be able to see this admin menu right here, but they will have a limited amount that they can access. So they won't have access to managing users, managing emergencies, the external website. If you guys use that, they're going to only have access to certain things in there. And that allows them typically to manage communications related features. So putting out polls, adding things to the calendar, and uploading files, as well as managing announcements are going to be things that they're going to have access to. If a member is admin access level, that's going to be access to all the specific menu options under that admin tools, and that's the highest level of access within OmegaOne. So admin users, they can manage everything within that menu. And again, if they're officer level, they just won't see the ones that they don't have access to. So once you have updated all your members accordingly, or before you update your officers before they transition, some things you can kind of do to manage that are within this menu, and we'll go over that, but we are going to start going down the line, and we'll start with managing points. So if you guys use a point system for your members, you will probably use this feature. It's a great way to organize that and see who has whatever amount of points for people to appeal for them and for admins to be able to approve those. So as you can see here, we have a few different point scenarios in. We have a First Fall chapter, a Sisterhood in, a philanthropy event, and a few other things that are in there. As you're going through the semester, you can add more points by going up to this menu option here, adding points possibilities. And you can look at this menu we're looking at right now is the points breakdown, and you can change that to look by person as well. So you can see how many points each of your members have, where they rank in that, and then percentage of points that they have if you guys go off of total number of points, or you can have like bonus points, which we'll look at in a second. So that's the points breakdown. Here's where you can add points possibilities, add categories, manage appeals, export, print, and settings. I'm going to look at the settings first. So this is kind of how you can set that up accordingly. So with the end of the semester wrapping up, one thing you guys might be wanting to do is clearing all the points. Now that cannot be undone, so make sure that if you're clearing that, you have exported all the information you need for the fall semester, and that is all closed up, and you don't need any of the points that are in there anymore. And you can go ahead and clear them, and it will start a clean slate on that. Now, looking at that, you can look at who all is tracked. So for this particular example, we do have new members and members being tracked, not alumni, obviously, but depending on if you do track points for new members or not, you can unclick them. And then for this example, we also have that points possibilities are not the same for members and new members. So what you can use that for is new members being able to practice appealing for points. So they can have points possibilities in and they can appeal, but not necessarily have to do that, just for practice. So they can use the system before they have to when they are members. And then you'll have your members selected as well. And then you can set up the number here. So you can set, if they're supposed to have X amount of points, you can set that number by the admin, or you can automatically have it just tally by how many points possibilities are put into OmegaOne. If people aren't meant to get all the points possibilities, then that's where you would go to set the number instead. And then you can change your rank settings, appeal settings. You can shut off when appeal points can be put in. So if you don't want them to be after a certain time, you can put that in. And then when members appeal for their points, you can select an admin to notify specifically for that. And then you can do the same thing with new members. And if we go back to the points, looking at, now that we've looked at the settings, we can look at how to add a points possibility. So here is what that is going to look like. You will just label that whatever you'd like. Let's say for this chapter elections, which typically happens during chapters, so you might just have like a chapter points value. So for this, we're going to do the description just as the chapter, which the positions will be nominated in. And then you can put a max score. So depending on what that value is, you can hide the points possibility if you don't want people to see how many points they're getting for that, or you can add it as a bonus points opportunity if you guys count it as that, depending on how you have your setup. And then you can set that up for either you get the points or you don't, or you can set it up for different amounts. So for example, if somebody is late for chapter, if they get a reduced amount of points, something like that, that's where you could use the different amounts. And then you can decide what category that goes under, and you can set a cutoff date for appeals if you wish. And then we can look here to see who all that's going to be visible to. So you have your admins, officers. We're not showing it for new members because new members typically aren't involved in election process, as well as aren't within chapter unless your new members have been already initiated. Either way, then their member status should be updated to members. And then we're not going to put the alumni on that unless you guys do communicate that to your alum as well. And then you can add the points possibility. So once you add it, you can then see it under the points, as well as that is now in, and you can give points to people, edit this, clear it, delete it. Under the menu option, after you've added a points possibility, if you need to add categories, you can do that under here. So these right here are the different categories. You can add different ones if you want to put different points under something else, a different category. And then you can manage your appeals from here. So if anybody has appealed for points, here you can see for the back to school karaoke sisterhood, an appeal was made that they went to the sisterhood, and you can deny or approve it. Now, if you go to deny or approve it, it will pull this up, and either way, you are going to put this decision in and you'll send a reply. So that member will be notified whether that is approved or denied. So if we send that approval, that member will now get a reply that they are good to go, or that they have received the points or not. And then you can export your appeals as well, and then you can export your points, print that to go ahead and keep those. So like at the end of the semester, if you're wanting that information to be there but be cleared out of the system before spring, but you want to save the information, the best way to do that is going to be by exporting all of that. Okay. And then going to the next thing here is managing your announcements. Here's where officers or admins can add announcements. They can give it a title, give it some text, add attachments to that. So if they wanted to add files, so for instance, we could do members who are eligible for nominations, please review. And then we can add an attachment accordingly. But if you add that file, you can then choose what section that's going to go under, and then who all of that is going to be visible to, and then whether or not you want to send email or text notification. This is where you can choose if you want to publish it to the wall. That's automatically always going to be selected, and then whether or not you want to send a push notification, and then you'll just click add announcement. So that's a great way to get information out. To if there are files that you want your members to be able to review, you can attach it in an announcement, and then it'll automatically go to your files that are stored within your OmegaOne. So when members are looking at their files here, they'll see it there, but they'll also see it on the wall when that announcement is posted. And then looking at study hours here, I'm not going to go too in-depth on this, but you can always review one of our previous webinars that goes a little more in-depth on study hours in particular, but this is basically where you will track that. And just like how you had in the points, you can go to your settings here and clear all the study hours at the end of each semester so that you can start over fresh. And you can see here, you can select who is tracking study hours. If you want your new members to practice tracking study hours, you can select them. And then you kind of set that up how you want with your start date and everything. You can block off certain hours depending on, like, if this is when chapter is, you may block off that hour because nobody would be studying in that hour. However you want to set that up. And then also you can see, you can do the weekly breakdown is what we're looking at here. You can add new locations, and here they can also put in appeals for study hours. So you'll be able to manage those just like the points, and members can appeal study hours maybe if where they were studying there wasn't a location set up, or if they were not able to record, their phone died, whatever it may be. So here you can see by study location, the list, and you can see that mapped view. And then if we want to add a new location, you can do that here, name it, and then you can enter in an address and draw that marker. So when you are going to draw the marker, so if we want to pick a Starbucks to do that, if you have the location, you can enter that specific location in there, and it will take you to that point on the map. So once you are at that location, you can just do to add a new marker. You want to start in the center of the marker and expand it out. You want to include all of the location that you can. So make sure you fully encompass that building. That way, when your members are there studying, they will be able to track that on their phones. So study hours are only trackable on their phones. So they have to have the mobile app downloaded for that geolocation tracking. So you'll just encompass that whole area there. And then you can save the changes, and then that will show now in your list. And so that is how you can set those up. Now, when you clear out your study hours here, it's not going to remove any of your locations. So don't worry about having to add locations. If you guys already have locations set up, then you are good to go. It's not going to clear that out of there. It's just going to clear the hours by person. The only way to remove or add new ones here is you can remove them or edit them, and then you can add new ones under the menu feature. Okay, and then another really important tool that is typically used the most is managing that calendar. Under your calendar feature here, you can add recurring events. We have different color settings that you can set up here. If you want things to be color coded based on category of event, you can label those however you wish. So that way, when you start adding events, people can know what type of event that's going to be based on the color. And then you can add events here. So if we want to add a specific meeting, so when I was in college, our nomination committee was called Slate. And so, for instance, they would meet to decide on nominations and interviews and set all that up. So if you wanted to put in when that meeting was going to be, you can add that in, select who's going to be able to see that, and then pick the day that that's going to be. And then you can pick a time as well. And if you wish to put it under a event color, you can. And then one really nice thing you can do with events is have a check-in type. So if you have events that are going to be either mandatory or you want to have a head count of who all was there, so you can view excuses, award points, however it may be, you can do a check-in. So with our check-in types here, you can do location-based check-in. If you do location-based, that is the same as your study hours. You'll draw the marker for whatever location you guys are meeting at, and then they will have to check in on their phone. You can do passcode check-in, where a passcode will be generated for the event, and your members will go in and put in that passcode. And then you can also do QR check-in. So this would be where an admin pulls up that QR code on their phone, and as members are coming in, they will scan the QR code to check in to the event. And they can do that by going to their calendar, clicking on the event, and clicking to check in. And then you can also link that specifically to a points possibility. So for example, I know we put in this chapter elections. This isn't really related to that event, but we could link that to an already existing point. So you want to put in any points possibilities you want to go towards something, and you can always come in and edit the event to link it. So that way, when your members check in, they will automatically be awarded points for any events they are checked into. And then you can allow for excuses to be submitted or not, depending on what that event looks like. If it's not something that people have to go to, then you may not need excuses on that. And then here you can select what type of notifications, just kind of like how everything else is. You can set that up, and then you can also set up reminders to go out for that. And then publish to the wall, send a push notification, however you want to send that out. Now, with these though, make sure that your members have set up their push notifications correctly in order to get that information when it comes through. And if you're not linking it to a points possibility, make sure you uncheck it. So that has now been added to the calendar, and you can see that in here under that specific color. And then when your members are going to an event, they can, this is from an admin perspective, they can edit the event, but you can also show the QR code if you're allowing, or if you're making it where members logged in. Admins can see the checked in members. And when your members are looking at that, they will have a bit of a different view. So when they go to their calendar, they can click on that, and they'll have different options here. For this one, we did not allow for submitting excuses, but for instance, for chapter, here we can submit an excuse, and that's where they can put in that information to appeal for that to be approved. You can see here, view excuses on any that do have that. And then here is another way you can manage excuses that come in. So you can do that from the calendar, or you can do that here as well. Approve or deny. If you guys keep up with that regularly, not necessarily have anything, just like with points, when you go to approve or deny it, you'll put in a reason and then send the reply, and that member will be notified then. And you can also use this to update your settings, clear all resolved ones. So at the end of each semester, before you transition, if you want to just clean up your OmegaOne account, you can come into these settings here and clear those. And then you can also set up who should receive notification when excuses are submitted. So if that's going to be changing, this might be something that you would change as well. I'm sorry. And here you can look at any that have been resolved. So when you're clearing that out, getting rid of the resolved excuses is just going to clean up this section here if you've had a lot come in throughout the semester. Another thing that admins can do here is the emergency check-in. This is a great tool to be able to use if you have inclement weather or on-campus shooter, anything like that that constitutes as an emergency. This is a great way to keep track of your members and be able to make sure everybody is in a safe place. Or I went over this a little more in depth in a previous webinar if you want to check that out, and then how you can do a test check-in rather than a actual check-in for an emergency, and just testing that with your members so that if anything does ever happen, you're able to use that appropriately. And then looking at the next feature, we have our files here. So when we made an announcement earlier, it would have put the file here where you can do that, or I can go ahead and add that here, and then you can select who's going to be able to see it. If it is something that needs to be password protected, you can add that on there and then put what the password is. Just make sure that as you're doing transitions, that any that are password protected, you guys are giving those passwords to the incoming officers, and then you can add it to a folder. So if we want to add it to a folder, we can do that under officer elections. And then again, you can publish this to the wall, send a push notification, send a text or email, and you'll just choose the file and upload that. And then you'll be able to, once you add that, see that under that particular folder. You can also add more folders for different breakdowns of that information just to keep it organized. And if you ever need to clean that up, you would just have to edit by folder or use the drop down. So obviously, this is going to change semester to semester or year to year, I guess. But when you are doing that, you can either edit, upload a different document, or just delete that and put in a new one, or keep the old ones if you want to have records of that. So this is a great tool to use for keeping any information that needs to be stored for members' reference, especially stuff that is specific to your chapter. Not everything that may be on your national page pertains specifically to that. So you want to have your chapter bylaws on here, anything related to your officer elections, anything related to recruitment, what each day is going to be, what bump groups look like, anything like that is really good resources just to use this for, so your members kind of have that all in one place. And then we already looked at managing users. So we'll look at managing questions and polls. Similar to your communications, this is a great way to just pull information from your users. So here, I went ahead and added a poll for class caucus nominations. This can be for anything. As you can see, this last one is going to be, are you attending the mixer, to give us a head count. You can add these for if you want members to vote on bid day themes, whatever it needs to be. You can do that, and you can look at the stat. So nobody has answered that yet, so you don't see anything on that. You can delete it, or you can edit that here. So when adding a question or poll, it's going to look the same. You can do that as a quick vote, which that kind of gives you a little more detail on what the difference between a quick vote is and just regular. And then you can put the name, what the question is, if you need to add a file to it. So let's say for bid day themes, you are have some different ideas that you want to put in there, you can add those files so people can review it and see which they kind of think looks the best and they like. Then you can choose who is going to be able to vote on that, so who's going to be able to see it, and then choose whether or not only one answer, multiple answers, or open text. So for the class caucus one, I used open text so people can type in nominations, but you can also use these other ones for preset answers as well and add more options. You can make it anonymous or not if you're wanting to see who voted what, and then you can also decide whether or not users can see what other people have voted or not. And again, here you would just choose how you're wanting to send that out and hit add whenever you're ready. So this is great for pulling quick information, especially if you need something to kind of be answered quickly. You can send it out as a text and publish it to the wall and with the push notification, and members will see that immediately so they can go in and do it. And you can even set it up with a time deadline for that poll to close, so you can have your members just go in and do that within a certain amount of time. So really good for quick answers over things. And then next, we'll look at your managed emails and text. This is settings for your OmegaOne specifically. Typically, you won't have to do anything with that. And then your managed groups kind of goes along with your managed emails and texts. We'll look at this first and then look at how you can manage those different groups. Here is where admins and officers can send out communications. They can either send email or text message. They can choose who they're going to send that to. So here we have like a group for officer election committee. You're going to send that. You want to send out a text, oh, we're meeting in XYZ area instead of the library now. You can just send them something quick to go out. Or if your members need some file information, you can send it in a email communication to go in there. Email is going to be a better option for if you have to attach something. Text, you won't be able to attach anything. That's typically just a quick message to get information out there ASAP, whereas the email is also going to get them the information immediately, but you can also just add things to that if you need them to review something and you want that to go to their email so that they have that available. So you can attach a file. Now you can, like I said, that typically they'll get that immediately if you choose to send now. You can also choose to send it later. So if you're up late at night studying and you want to put in a thing, but you don't want it to send until the next morning for everyone to see it, you can do to send it later and basically schedule it to send at a different time for when that needs to be released. This here is where you'll see all your groups. So your members, new members, and officers and admins will always automatically update as groups based on their access levels and their member status. So the other groups, though, you can make and place people in that. And we'll look at that in a second, but let's go ahead and look at the send text message. Basically similar to the email, you can just send a text message. Those will all send immediately though, so you don't have the option to send it later. And again, you don't have the option to attach any files. So when looking at your groups, you can set up for mass communication. You can add a messaging group. So here, Officer Election Committee was made. And if you look at that, you can see the name of it, email address that's basically where your notifications are coming from, and then who can join the group. So you can say officers and admins choose who's in the group, or you can say people choose to join themselves. So if this is maybe a messaging group for recruitment committee and that's all voluntary, then you can do people can join it themselves, and then it can be the responsibilities of the members to put themselves in that group to get the notifications, and then you can choose who is able to send communications in that, and then where that email goes to. So if they reply, is that only going to the original sender or is it going to the entire list of people in the group? And then you can kind of dictate who this group is for. So if it's for members or new members, you can select and it will show you all of those. So if it's for a new member, you can select new member and you'll see those load in as well. Here, we don't have anybody in the new members group, so only members are selected and you can move people in and out of that. So if this person was no longer on the committee, you can move them out of that section, or if they need to be on that, you can move them back in accordingly. So this is how you can curate the list. So just because you select members doesn't mean that all members will be in there. It will just show you all of your members to be able to put in this list if you are doing it where you can choose who's in the group. So this is really good for subsects of the organization that may need information separate from everyone else. You don't want to send a mass email to everyone. You just want to send it to a particular group. So this is a really great way to manage that and communicate, so you're not having, a bunch of text message threads and that sort of thing. And so that kind of wraps up going over all of the admin menu features. So one last thing I would like to show you guys, I mentioned that you want to make sure your members have their information updated appropriately. So to get communications. So when they are in their profile, they can go here to my profile, and then they can click on if they want to receive. So text messages, announcements, events, you want to make sure they have these all turned to yes in order to get those. And then here you can see the subscription emails if they're in any different groups. So they want to make sure to have this on, as well as if they are using their mobile app, then they want to make sure to have their notifications on within their mobile app, so they can adjust those settings on their phone specifically. And then another great thing you can look at is if you're ever having trouble with any of these features or any of the admin tools, you can look at the Get Help button here. It's going to take you to our knowledge base for OmegaOne, where you can ask multiple different questions. So if you want to put something about like how to get your new members in or why they can't view an announcement, whatever it may be, you can type the keyword, you can type a full question, and it's going to pull up related articles, which you can then look at to figure out what's going on. If you're not able to find something in here, you can then go to submit a request as well. Definitely check these out, and we have videos and webinars posted in here as well. We'll have another webinar coming up soon. So all of those go in here, and any basically FAQs will be in this. And then if you can't find something though, you can submit a request here to reach out to software support, and that will take you can choose whatever you're wanting and then put in all your information. If you're having a specific issue that seems like it may be something that shouldn't be happening, then just make sure when you are reaching out to them, you do have the ability to attach files in here. So put in screenshots, anything to be able to best get us that information so we can help you out as much as possible. So if there's something specific going on, make sure if you're an error message, screenshot that, and when you send that in, make sure to attach that just so we have that information to better assist you guys. And that wraps up today's training. So now we'll go back to this for this is the email support, and also where you can click the Get Help, but we will go look at questions now that may have come through during the session, or if you have any questions. Not seeing that any necessarily came through, but if anybody has any questions, feel free to submit those.
Hey, Sarah Beth. Yeah, just a couple of ones that are relevant to this time of year that may be helpful or that have come through. So first is just making sure that when officer elections are held, we want to make sure that everyone knows where to go to update access and give those new officers access to OmegaOne. So Sarah Beth, do you mind going back to OmegaOne and just showing everyone to make sure they know where to go to do that, and just reiterating the different access levels?
Yeah, so under your manage users, That's where you will update your access, where most chapters will. Again, if you are a national partner that has an integration, just make sure you are updating that in whatever system you use, in whatever portal. And if a member has changed to a specific position, that will update their access level here, and member types and all of that will pull into OmegaOne. But for a majority of people, you're going to go to here to the manage users under the admin tools, and you will update access levels under this right here. So if you know a certain member, because most people's list is a lot longer than this. So if you have a lot of users and you're wanting to search through, you can just type in who you're wanting to update, and then you can drop them down to admin, officer, or anybody who's currently on your exec board who needs to be taken off of that because they're going alum. You'll want to move theirs down to normal. And again, normal, they will not have this menu here. Officers will have communication options on this, and then admins will have full access to the admin tools under here to be able to manage the OmegaOne account.
Okay, great. Thank you. But yes, and just another bit about that with the new users, we of course encourage everyone to make sure that you download the app. So if your chapters have an officer elections, when you're getting those new officers ready for transitions, make sure that they have downloaded the app. It's available in the App Store or Google Play. There's a lot of Omega something apps out there, because we also host some other products that such as Omega Recruit. So make sure there's not any confusion there with the OmegaOne app. They get that downloaded because that's the best way to ensure that everything is working correctly, especially with some of those tools that are based on geolocation that Sarah Beth was showing. And then one last point, I know Sarah Beth already touched on this, but for your new users, we will have some special webinars for them next month. The first one will be on November 3rd at 4 p.m. That will be for new officer training for OmegaOne. And then we'll also do another webinar a bit later in November 29th at 3 p.m. Eastern. So we will be sending out some mass emails. So check your inboxes for those that will have the webinar registration information. If you are an outgoing officer, make sure to just forward that on to the new officers, so that just to ensure that they're getting it and they can get the training they need. And if they register for the webinar, then they'll still get the recording even if they can't attend the live session. So we want to make sure that everybody gets off to a good start. And then also today's webinar, the recording will go out to everyone who registered. So if you have somebody else in your chapter that may not have been able to attend the live training, we'll make sure that that recording goes out shortly, and it will also be available in our YouTube channel and our Help Center. All right, well, I think that wraps it up for today. Thanks, Sarah Beth, for doing the training. Thank you all for joining us. We've got that information there on the screen. If you need anything, feel free to reach out, send us an email, select that red Get Help button in OmegaOne, and we will be glad to assist you. I hope everyone has a great afternoon. Thank you.